Yeah, mate. So they all went through 3 different surgeons.
Yeah, right.
Because I was in emergency. Two different surgeons sort of had to go.
Yep.
And they were quite worried because of where I was in the hospital. I wasn't in like an operating theatre or anything. And by this time, I'd lost quite a bit of blood, and they were sort of at the point where they were going to pull up and put me into theatre the next day and try and get it out. And I had a young surgeon, sort of, he came in, and I just sort of said, mate, I want to get it out. Do what needs to be done to get it out.
Welcome to this week's episode of Fit4Fifo. I'm Jason, your host, and today we're meeting a man who's worked in heavy industry and including mining, as a diesel fitter. And as you'll hear, he's worked all over, now running his own business and living true to his motto: anything, anywhere, anytime. Thanks for coming on the show, Darcy.
Thanks for the invitation, mate.
No worries. Firstly, mate, I'll just share with the listeners where they can find both of us and follow us. So for us, you can get us on the main social media platform: Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We're also on Spotify and iTunes for those who prefer podcast. And Darcy, yourself, where can our listeners find you, mate, and follow you?
Mainly Facebook and Instagram.
Right.
I'm in the process at the moment of doing a website and whatnot for the business, but sort of just finding time and whatnot to do it. But eventually there will be a website, so stay tuned. But yeah, for now it's just mainly Instagram and Facebook.
Sure. And what's your tag name there, or your username on Instagram?
My personal one is DW Pagey, or my business one is Diesel Powered Services, or DPS. My main slogan, I suppose.
All right, cool. So, mate, firstly, I'll get you to tell us a bit about where you grew up and how you became a diesel fitter.
Yeah. Okay. So, born and bred in Alice Springs. My mum's originally from Alice Springs. My dad is from down in Adelaide. I'm one of 4 boys. I'm number 3. I've got 2 elder brothers and 1 younger brother. So obviously born in Alice Springs, grew up in Alice Springs, all my schooling in Alice Springs. And it was, Alice Springs is a lovely place. It has its pros and cons like everywhere, but growing up, the freedom and everything, like I suppose like a small country town would give you, was brilliant. I don't regret that for a second. People sort of say to you, why Alice Springs, or didn't you miss Adelaide or places like that? But no, like it was brilliant. It was, you go 5 kilometres any direction and you can pretty much do what you want. There's no sort of boundaries, or there's all farms and stations, but they're pretty, as long as you respect them and respect their sort of land and whatnot, you pretty much can do whatever you like. So it was brilliant growing up there. I was sort of there, did my 3 apprenticeships there. When I turned 21, I sort of moved down to Adelaide, and I've been down here sort of ever since. But the majority of my work still takes me back to Alice Springs in Northern Territory, which is sort of the best of both worlds at the moment. So,
growing up in Alice, does that sort of tie into how you became a diesel fitter? Would you say diesel mechanic? Or you said 3 apprenticeships or 3 trades?
To begin with, when I was sort of in year 10 at school, I sort of tried them all. I tried a Friggy, Sparky, Builder. Sort of gave them all a go. I gave mechanics a go, sort of light vehicle, and I sort of there was something about the mechanic side of things that I really enjoyed. I enjoyed pulling things apart and putting it back together. And it was only when my parents sort of said to me, "Don't do it. It's a bit of a dead end job. There's not much money in it." And I sort of said to myself, you know what, I'm going to prove you guys wrong, and did it. So I sort of finished school. I think I got about a month into year 11, and then I thought, nah, this is not really for me. And finished up and went and started my light vehicle apprenticeship. So I did that over the next 3.5 years. I did that in Alice Springs, and it was brilliant. The boss I had, I learned a lot off. We had a really good friendship. at the same time as him being my boss, I suppose. We did lots of things together. Went over to Thailand together, and
Yeah.
just yeah, it was really good. It was a really good apprenticeship, and I learned a lot. And
Right.
yeah, so then from there, I sort of upskilled and did my heavy vehicle road transport. So like road trains, trucks, trailers, pretty much anything
Yep.
from that next step of light vehicle upwards.
And this is all still in Alice, was it?
This is all still in Alice, mate. I did pretty much everything in Alice.
Right.
And I by that time I'd sort of changed a few different employees. I tend to get bored, or not necessarily bored, but I lose sort of interest, and if I'm not learning,
Yep.
I like to constantly be learning, whether
Yeah.
that's a different employer or different machinery or different. Yeah, so I sort of did upskilled and did my heavy vehicle transport, and
Yeah.
then when I was at TAFE, I sort of had the opportunity to upskill again and do my mobile plant. So that sort of qualifies as all your mining equipment, all your
Yeah.
track machines.
And how long extra once you've done your first light vehicle
It
apprenticeship,
was
how
it
long
was
extra would you?
probably in to upskill into my heavy vehicle transport and plant was probably it was about another 4 or 5 years, mate.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so because it was another couple of years to do the transport, and then there was extra modules on top of that to do the plant side of things.
Right.
But it was sort of because they used to be joined, they used to be combined, but
Yep.
now it's sort of split. So you either do your road transport or you do your mobile plant.
Yep.
And at the time when I did my road transport, a few mates of mine were doing their mobile plant, and it just seemed like they were a lot more sought after than
Right.
than the road transport side of things. Even though they're both heavy diesel,
Yep.
it's just that bit of paper that says otherwise.
Yeah.
So I
Yep.
thought, you know what, I think it would really benefit in doing that. So I spent the time and put in the training and did the mobile plant also, and sort of since then I've never looked back. You know, I'm really
Nice.
glad I did it. I don't
Yeah.
regret people say, you know, why don't you just do your heavy diesel to start with? But from time to time, I do enjoy going back to working on vehicles,
Yeah.
cars,
Right.
full drives, that sort of stuff.
Yep.
Things are
Yep.
smaller. Everything's not so bloody heavy, but
Yeah. Right.
it's sort of pros and cons with both, mate.
Yep. And you were saying to me that you do work at, like in your business, you work on a massive range of different equipment. Though, for just in general, for someone who works as a diesel fitter or plant, like someone with a ticket on their plant equipment, what sort of equipment are they usually working on?
I suppose it depends on the company, depends on the
Right.
site. Sort of, I was out at Roxby Downs for 8 months, and that was a lot of like 777 dump trucks, 992 loaders, and sort of the real big gear.
Yep.
But it just depends on the site, I suppose, to what they use, to the company they work for,
Yeah.
all that other sort of things, where you get more based back in sort of, I suppose, Adelaide or whatnot. And you could be with a truck company where you just road trains,
Yep.
trailers. It's different people like different things. Some people love working on trucks. Some people love working on the plant side of things, where I like the combination.
Yeah. Yeah.
I sort of, and right now I'm in a position, well, I'm not really, but I sort of just work. So,
Right.
if I've got to fix a motorbike, I'll do a motorbike. If I've got to do
Yeah.
a loader or a dump truck or a dozer, I sort of don't really turn away work, and I try and give everything a crack. And it's a good variety of,
Yep. Right. Yep.
yep. So yeah.
Nice one. And what sort of equipment, like in your career, since you started working in heavy industry, what sort of work were you doing, and what sort of equipment have you worked on?
Yep. So I've sort of, the majority of my stuff has all been Caterpillar equipment. I've sort of, it ranges from little D6s or dozers, to all your D11s, all your front end loaders, 950, 960s, 992s. It's sort of, and a lot of truck stuff, a lot of Kenworth, Mac, trailers, side tippers, pretty much everything.
Yeah. Right.
It's yeah, the companies that I have worked for, that sort of the majority of that was all Kenworth and Caterpillar gear. So I sort of that's been the majority of my training and work has been in that sort of industry. But then I've worked for a drilling company for about a year and a half, and that was sort of bits and pieces all over Australia on different sorts of drill rigs and
Hey,
whatnot. Sorry, you there?
Darcy, can you hear me, mate?
Yeah, mate. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. You just dropped out. I missed you. I think last word I heard you say was cranes, mate.
Yep. Oh, sorry. Yep.
Yeah.
So, the bits and pieces on everything.
Yeah.
I worked for a drilling company.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. I worked for them for about a year and a half,
Mm-hmm.
and that was sort of all over Australia.
Right.
Working on mainly stream drill rigs. They range from like a 130,000 to 200,000, like pulling pounds.
Right.
And yeah, so that was sort of an interesting learning curve. Also,
Yeah.
that drill rig industry is different.
Yeah. Right.
Love-hate relationship. Some people love it, some people don't.
Yeah.
But
So
it was interesting.
would that drilling work be a little bit more reactive work? So you're fixing like things, and there's a lot of more pressure on you.
There was, mate. There was
Yeah.
a great deal of pressure.
Mhm.
It was strange because I've sort of always been in the industry where you got to fix it and maintain it and keep it running.
Right.
When the drill rig industry was a little bit different, where we weren't allowed to sort of necessarily do anything to the machine while it was drilling.
Wow. Yeah.
Because if anything, you do it accidentally stuff anything up, it's
Yeah.
a world of drama.
Mhm.
And it can go terribly wrong really quickly. So
Yeah.
it was unless something does go wrong, and then you've obviously got to fix it.
Yeah.
But the majority of it was, they'd shut the machine down for a certain amount of time, and then they'd give you the opportunity to go through it and whatnot.
Right.
Some of the locations where we were drilling, we sort of had the very basics, and that was it.
Mhm.
We had to block off a monitoring bore for the South Australian government, and that was pretty much in the middle of the Simpson Desert. So we
Right.
were about 200 k's off the Birdsville track,
Yeah.
on a road called the Rig Road.
Yeah.
And to get in that, to do that 200 kilometres took us about 2 weeks to get in there with all the equipment. So that was a fun experience. It was
Right.
very isolated. You're very limited on everything, and
Yeah.
so you just had to make do and do what you
And
can to keep it going. And
right. So on those sort of jobs and gigs, you're sort of just sitting there with your fingers crossed the whole time, are you? Hoping that.
yeah, mate, pretty much. A couple of times we had some issues when we had to get a plane to drop some stuff off, or a helicopter in there to get some parts and equipment, just because the money I'm assuming is the longer you're down, the more money it costs. So but it was good. It was a challenge. I like being challenged. So
Yeah, right. In general, like mining maintenance, would it be fair to say that most of your work is sort of scheduled and more like proactive? You sort of not as much pressure, just all.
yeah, definitely, mate. Definitely, a lot of it's all scheduled work. All your services, you sort of know when they're coming up. Mainly, everything's based on like a 250 hour on a service. So every 250 hours, they count down with all your pre-starts and that. So you sort of have a rough idea when everything's coming up, and it's all scheduled in. And you normally have a backup machine there, and you switch it out while you're doing that scheduled service or repairs. Obviously, in everything in our line of work and field, there's always the issue of breakdowns, and they can't be helped. That happens, and you just do what you got to do to fix it and try and the minimal downtime and whatnot.
Yeah, right. I actually had a chat yesterday with a guy who he is a consultant to mining companies, and basically what he does is help them optimize their schedules and improve everything. And what he was saying was one of the big issues is with the schedules, like equipment being over serviced. Is that something you notice working in it?
Oh, I suppose I've never really got that much into that aspect of things.
Yep.
I've always, all the companies that I've worked for, you sort of every 250 hours,
Yep.
you bring it in, you do your service, you got your 250-hour service, which is a real basic one, then you go 500, 750, 1,000, you sort of, as it goes through. And yeah, I've never really come across sort of over servicing, whatnot.
Yep.
They do like Caterpillar, and I suppose every other company also, they do like a SOS oil sample thing where you take samples of your oils and you pretty much send it through to them, and they sort of come back and they'll tell you whether you can push that service out for the next time, or what's going on basically internally in the machine.
Yeah, right.
Which is a really handy thing.
Yeah.
I love it. I try and do it for everything I work on. At least then you get a bit of an idea and a bit of a not necessarily structure, but a bit of a ongoing list of what's happening.
Yeah. Sure.
And if you can push it out, you push it out, because obviously it saves the client or customer more money.
Yeah.
If it doesn't need to be serviced, well, don't fix something that's not broken in that sort of aspect. But
Sure. Yeah. He was actually telling me that, like on certain sites, probably the biggest problem, it's not so much over servicing them, because obviously it keeps them maintained, but he said it causes complacency with the guys doing the work, and then it gets to a point where they know that themselves, because they know the equipment so well, that it doesn't need to get done, and then sometimes they just stop doing it, and then that's when problems start.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Which I can understand that, and I can see that.
Sure.
But yeah, it's sort of one of those things, and sort of different companies, different ways of thinking and handling things, and
Exactly.
Yeah,
sure. Mate, I saw on your Instagram a few weeks ago, I think it was, you'd hurt your leg. You had a bit of an incident there. You told me a little bit about that. So what happened there, mate?
Yeah, so I was doing a job in Alice Springs for a station. They had a D10R dozer, and I had to replace the ripper teeth. I had to do a lot of work to it. I had to change the equalizer bar in it, which was sort of it's quite a substantial job, especially on that size machine, because everything's so heavy. I think they're about the 60 ton, maybe, sort of in the weight load in that machine, possibly more. And yeah, they was out on a station, and they'd snapped the equalizer bar, which is probably the main bar in the machine to support both side tracks and body. And anyway, so I sort of got that job done, and I was doing a few other bits and pieces to it, just trying to get it ready, because once it goes back out to a station, you might not see it for another 2 years. So I had to replace some ripper tips and boots and whatnot on this machine, and you normally slip the sides at the pin that holds them together, and then give them a good old whack with a sledgy and get them off. In this instance, I was hitting them with a sledgehammer, and a chunk of it had basically snapped off and straight into my leg. At the time, I sort of thought I hit myself with a sledgehammer. And it slipped off and hit myself. But once I looked down and realised the amount of blood and everything, it was, I thought, I've done something pretty serious here. So I sort of packed up my tools and packed the truck up and drove myself to the hospital and got there. And it took a few surgeons and whatnot to try and get it out. And it was about the size of a $2 coin. So it was, and where it was sort of just below my right knee. So it was a very sort of tender spot for putting weight on it and everything like that. But it was sort of just only sort of starting to heal now, which is good. But
didn't you were saying that they had to have a good crack at it, didn't they, to get it out?
Mate. So they went through 3 different surgeons. Because I was in emergency. 2 different surgeons sort of had to go. And they were quite worried because of where I was in the hospital. I wasn't in like an operating theatre or anything. And by this time, I'd lost quite a bit of blood, and they were sort of at the point where they were going to pull up and put me into theatre the next day and try and get it out. And I had a young surgeon, sort of, he came in, and I just sort of said, mate, I want to get it out. Do what needs to be done to get it out. And I could hear all the surgeons that they were trying to grab it, and you could hear the metal on the metal, but they just couldn't get a hold of it. And
Right.
anyway, this young guy, he eventually got it, pulled it out, and
Yeah.
it was a great relief. So
Yeah.
it just
And
sort of shows how easy it can happen. I've had it happen before with like cold chisels and whatnot,
yeah.
into your arm, and 9 times out of 10 you just pull them out.
Yeah. Right.
But in this instance, it went straight through my jeans, and straight into my leg. It was, a bit of shrapnel, and you just think, well, that could have been your face, or could have been an eye, or something like that. It just shows how important that safety aspect is in that sort of industry, and you just got to be careful.
Shit. Did that keep you out of work at all?
Um, it. I was back at work the next morning. I wanted to go back that night, but it was a bit too sore, so I thought I'd better go home and just rest it up for that night. But no, back at work the next morning, mate, and
Yeah.
slightly, it did slow me up a little bit over the next couple of days. But
Yeah.
I still had work to do and jobs to get done, and deadlines to meet. So you just had to slowly keep on.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that actually brings me to my next question. I suppose the urgency to get back. So, do you want to tell us a bit about what you're doing right now?
Yep. So I've sort of worked for a few different companies over the last couple of years. I I sort of got to one point, and I wanted the next thing. I wanted a challenge. Um, and my eldest brother owned a building company in Alice Springs, so yeah, going off him being one of my role models, I sort of thought, well, why don't I give it a shot and do my own thing? And at the time, I didn't really know what I was getting myself in for. Was sort of just a bit of a wing it, a bit of a risk.
Yeah.
But yeah, I started up a few years ago actually, and did it for a good year and a half.
Yeah.
And then sort of put it on hold a little bit. I sort of had a girlfriend back in Adelaide, and sort of just had to sort of, I suppose, get your priorities right. And so I moved back to Adelaide for a couple of years. Based more so back in Adelaide.
Yep.
And it was only in last year that I thought, nah, I actually wanted, I missed it. I missed working
Yeah.
for
Right.
yourself, the reward, the challenge. So I thought to myself, nah, I'll go back out and I'll do it again. So I sort of just renewed all my insurances and all that sort of stuff, and
Yeah.
started working back for myself. And so I sort of worked in Northern Territory, South Australia. The majority of my work is very isolated and remote, but it poses its challenges. But at the same time, some of the places I get to see is pretty spectacular.
Yeah.
So it's good. It's good. I love the challenge of working for yourself. It's
Yeah.
not just the doing the work. It's the bookkeeping side of things, the business side of things, learning different ways and how different people handle it and go about it, and the different type of businesses. I was talking to someone the other night, and she owns a clothing line, and just they're very similar but different.
Yeah.
How they
Right.
sort of handle stocks and different things like that.
Yeah.
Which is it's interesting, and I really enjoy that side of things and
Sure.
that learning. So
What's some of the bigger challenges that you sort of had in the early stages of working for yourself?
obviously, you talk to a lot of people, and they sort of said like money, like getting paid,
Right.
and that is a huge thing. To once you send the invoice out, you wait for that payment to come through, and to chase it up. I've never really been the one to talk about money, or to conflicts over money or whatnot. But once you work for yourself, and that's your income. I don't
Yep.
have another wage coming on the side. You've
Yep.
sort of got to take it to that next level, and bring people and be like, look, mate, this is overdue. You need to pay it. I've done the work. Yeah, so that's that's one of the big challenges.
Yep.
And also trying to figure out how to do things by yourself.
Right.
A lot of the locations I go, I am by myself, and I've got to tackle certain jobs which do pays it do has its issues and whatnot in regards to trying to lift things, and just figure out different ways of doing things,
Yeah.
and not trying not to put yourself at risk. because a lot of these places are really isolated, and I'm there by myself for a couple of days. So
Right. So you become pretty creative too, I suppose.
definitely, mate, definitely. So it
And you still have a lot of do you still have a lot of paperwork and stuff for your own self to cover yourself for insurance and stuff like that?
all that sort of thing, insurances. You know, it's a killer, but you need it. You know, your public liability insurance and your income protection insurance. So a few weeks ago, I was asked to subcontract into a company, and one of the main things was your income protection. So I've struggled with this a few times now in the aspect of I'm a type 1 diabetic.
Right.
So I've tried to apply for income protection before, and I'm just denied. Mainly because I am a type 1 diabetic, and you know, they sort of see it as if you had an issue at work or whatnot, and they can relate it back to it. We don't want to cover you, pretty much. So I'm still actually going through the hassle of it now, still trying to get it, which is quite frustrating because I just want to have a crack. I just want to have a go, and I just want to work. I want to build a business and something that's respectable and respected. And when things like that sort of hold you back, it's frustrating and annoying. I can understand their side of it, but you know, at some point they surely got to understand your side.
Yeah, sure, definitely. You'd think that they would maybe incorporate some sort of like a go and do some sort of health check or something, just to see, because it's quite manageable, isn't it?
It is, mate. It is definitely manageable. You know, there is its downside to it, and there's pros and, well, not really many pros, but mainly cons. But it is definitely manageable. It's a disease that is manageable. It was something that I didn't choose to have, or I don't necessarily want, but I'm stuck with it. So I've just got to do the best I can with it.
You're probably a lot more aware though of your own health and your body than other people, because it's something you need to
Yeah, mate, I would say so. Look, I definitely don't manage it to probably the where I could 90%, because I'm sort of, so it's not really an excuse, but it's because I work so much, and I'm sort of there's a very fine line between with a type 1, with your injections and that, because I basically have to do the job on my pancreas with a needle, and there's a very fine line with that workload and things that can basically affect it, stress, heat, weather, workload. So I've got to be careful in that aspect, but it is a manageable disease. There's a lot of people out there with it, and it's getting pretty crazy now, but it
has that affected, besides your insurance, has that affected you getting any jobs in the past at all?
No, I've always been a bit reluctant to speak up about it and sort of tell my employer, but I've always felt like it's a duty of care for me to tell my employer. And I've only necessarily told the people that sort of need to know, whether it's a safety officer on site or whatnot. So I've never had an issue in regards to it, which is good. My biggest thing was continue to hold my road train license, because I do a bit of driving every now and then. That was my biggest hurdle to overcome, was to continue to hold that, because obviously you run the risk of having a low and obviously crashing or something like that, which is dangerous. But there's sort of and now I've sort of got onto a great specialist, and he's brilliant in that regards. And you know, as long as I'm sort of managing it to as he sort of sees fit, he's happy to continue signing that letter to say I can keep holding my license. So it's great. Yeah,
it's great. So you do spend a lot of time on the road, I take it, traveling between jobs and stuff.
Yeah, mate. Yeah.
How do you keep yourself entertained when you're on the road?
Music. Yeah, music's a huge part of my life. I love sort of my country music, and sort of I do cover a fair few kilometres each week. So you know, to and from jobs or from job to job and whatnot. Most of my travel from Alice to Adelaide is all done by plane, just because it's more affordable. I don't lose that 12 hours of driving.
Right.
But yeah, most of it is thinking time or music.
Sure.
So you think of you think of a lot of things. How you can restructure something or how you can do something better. And I try and catch up. I suppose call family and friends. And catch up with them when I'm driving. Because when I'm working, I can't necessarily do it. So I just chuck them on the hands free and chat with them when I have reception and do that. So it's good.
Nice. Yeah. And being a contractor, what do you enjoy most about it? What are the highlights for you?
The freedom. That's a huge part. Even though it's very hard, and working for yourself. Some days you're like, geez, I wish I could be employed by someone and knock off and not have a worry in the world. You've got all them extra stresses and whatnot. But you do have that freedom aspect.
Sure.
I can sort of structure weekends away or bands or concerts and that around my work. And be like, well, if I want to take time off, I can. I don't always get that luxury. Sometimes, just in any job, work's work, and if it's there, you got to do it. But most of the time, I can sort of structure it around the things that I like doing and whatnot. So most of the time, I do 3 or 4 weeks away at a time, and then try and have a week or at least a weekend off. But yeah, I've sort of had coming up 2 weeks off now, and I'm sort of starting to go a little bit crazy. So I'm sort of hanging to get back to work and get back into it. So yeah.
And as before I asked, I think about your challenges at starting up the business. Is there any other separate ones that are sort of more to do with ongoing running the business, or you?
Obviously, the sort of whole tax side of things. I know I've heard of a lot of people. They've gone out to work for themselves because they think it's a brilliant thing, and the money is great, which it is. It is great if you're willing to put in. You've also got to remember that you've still got to pay tax. The more you earn, the more you get taxed. But you've got to, come tax time, you want to have that money in the bank, I suppose, to be able to pay for it. And so not necessarily all that money that comes in is yours.
Gotcha.
You got to that sort of, you got to sort of, I suppose that's where it becomes, professional in that aspect of allocating that money into a separate bank account for tax purposes. And but challenges besides from that, no, not really.
Just little things each day.
Finding work, mate. I found it very difficult to find work down in South Australia. Majority of my work is word of mouth throughout the Northern Territory, and I've never really had to advertise. I do a bit of advertising on that on Facebook, because it's a lot easier to say no to it than it is to find it. But yeah, I found that sort of down in South Australia, trying to find the work is quite hard. Because ideally I'd like to be based a bit more down in Adelaide and home every night, which would be nice. But you take the good with the bad, and while I've got the work there, well, I'll keep doing it. And
I think you just made me think about something. Even people working in mining, like for a contractor or for an employer, and mining, I think it's a lot of people think that all their money issues will be solved just getting one of these jobs in mining and making extra cash. But I think probably more to the point is if you can't manage your cash and you can't save money just on a normal wage like in town and stuff, it's not going to change. All you're doing is scaling up the model of how much cash you're wasting, really, isn't it?
I've never necessarily been really great with cash, and I think the more you earn, and like everyone says, the more you earn, the more you spend. Which I can understand that, and a lot more people that have these sort of work in mining and that, I suppose, have a few more toys and whatnot. And I know sort of even my dad, he worked out in the mine for about 13 years, and coming back to a normal job and a normal life and a normal wage, I think he found quite difficult and challenging. But I suppose that's how 80% of Australia lives, on that normal wage and that normal life. So it can be done. And there are a lot of people that do it, obviously. So it's sort of it's about managing that money and spending it wisely and correctly, and So.
And starting up as a contractor, do you have to keep a lot of like equipment yourself? Like, was there a lot of stuff outlay at the beginning and ongoing? Is it?
Yeah, there was, mate. I sort of, you got to draw the line somewhere. Like, how much do you carry on board? What do you actually have? Because all my work is mobile, I can only carry a certain amount of tools and equipment. Same with stock. But I sort of, like I was saying before, I sort of winged it a little bit, where I had the sort of all my tools and whatnot, like your basic stuff, and then sort of just started. And as I've sort of continued on, I've sort of built that up and bought a truck and things like that. But it's definitely doable, just with the basics, I suppose. And all that bigger stuff, I've had a lot of help while working for myself through other bigger companies, sort of. I suppose I've kept on the right side of them and helped them out when they've needed it, and they've helped me out in return with jacks and 100-ton jacks and stands and things like that for doing the bigger jobs, which is good, and sort of helped me out a lot, because I couldn't sort of. You may need it once a year, you may need it once every 2 years, and to outlay them thousands of dollars for one job, it doesn't really make it viable. I've sort of borrowed bits and pieces, and that's sort of where Alice has been great in that aspect of everyone. You gets along with each other in that industry, so you sort of stay friends with them, and they don't mind to help you out, and vice versa. You help them out where you can, if you can, and so.
Oh, that's good. That's good, mate. Did I see on your Instagram that you spend some nights in your swag? Do you carry your swag some from time to time? Or?
Yeah, mate. Yep. So I pretty much take my swag to every single job. I carry it on board because I'd much rather have that to sleep in than nothing. Sometimes you're promised accommodation and or whatnot, and you get there, and it's not really ideal, or there's no accommodation or whatnot. So I'd rather have my swag there. Even just to pull up on the side of the road and have a sleep. It's at least you can get a decent sleep, and so I just carry that. I think it's better to have it than not. So roll out and use it where need be, and
And do you stay in camps as well, mining camps?
Yep. So 5 or 6 months of last year, I was subcontracting to a company out at Docker River. So that's right on the Northern Territory, Western Australia border. Sort of just out past Ayers Rock and the Olgas and whatnot. We're out there for about 5 to 6 months, and we had a camp out there, and sort of that was really nice, sort of air conditioned rooms and whatnot. So that was good in that aspect. Camping in your swag for that amount of time, I don't know how that'd go, but it was good. It was and most of those sort of mining or civil companies, they do provide accommodation, and their camps are their camps are pretty good, pretty reasonable. Not there's a cook there, and there's showers and everything. So
what if there's one piece of advice you'd give to someone who wanted to start up their own small like contracting business in any field, like working in heavy industry, mining, or all over, what would it be?
A lot of people I've spoken to that have thought about it, they sort of, I wouldn't say they're necessarily scared, but it can be quite full on. And I've always told myself that if I fail, well, at least I tried. There's no sort of, if I fail, well, I can always go back working for someone, and at least I gave it a shot. So that's sort of how some days I'm there like, shit, I can't, there's a lot going on and whatnot, but I'll work through it, and at least I know that I'm there and I'm working, and so that's probably my biggest thing is, give it a shot. If it doesn't work out, well, that's okay. You're still giving it a shot. But just, I wouldn't really. A lot of people, they want X amount of money in the bank before they go and do it, and
Yeah.
and things like that, which I didn't necessarily have a great deal of money in the bank when I went to do it. I just I knew I can work, so
Yeah.
I just used what I could and had my own vehicle and sort of set that up and just worked out of that and went from there and slowly built it up, and
Yep.
so.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, mate. So there was a post that I saw on your Instagram that you put up, might have been earlier in the year or late last year, just about speaking out and speaking up. Do you want to tell us a bit about that, and also the feedback you got from it as well?
Yeah, so look, I was driving back from a job. It would have been a couple of months ago, and I did a bit of a post in regards to mental health and men's mental health. More so. Of I suppose I became a friend on that Blokes Advice page a few years ago. I think it was created on Facebook. And I've always heard about sort of Beyond Blue and all those other organisations, trying to support like mental health and that. But this page, wholly and solely for blokes, and the amount of talk on there in regards to mental health and whatnot sort of really stood out, and in some aspects it's quite sad.
What would be an example of something you see on you'd read on there?
I've seen posts on there about guys sort of talking about how they're really struggling and really don't know what to do. And in some aspects, there would be thousands and thousands of comments on there of other people sort of just saying, look, we're talk about it. We can all sort of help you out where we can. And some people, they'll post it again in a few days and saying like, thank you, I really appreciate it. And some other, in sort of the more sadder stories, you'll get friends of theirs posting and saying, look, he ended up passing away a few days ago or whatnot. Which that sort of it's obviously very sad.
Sure.
And it's sort of I've had my sort of rough trot over the last couple of years with the relationships and whatnot and breakups and I've sort of learned it's a lot easier to talk about it. I've got really good friends and family and that to support me and help me. And talking about it does wonders. It really does. It sort of it lightens the load and whatnot.
And this was the post that you actually
it's actually the post I did up on there. I wasn't looking for any
validation.
I wasn't looking for any sympathy out of it, anything like that. It was just a post that I sort of wanted to put up, and if I could help one person out of it, well, that'd be phenomenal. I probably had 200 to 300 messages from it, from all over Australia, saying like, well done, and other actually people sort of asking about my opinion on certain things and how I'd handle it and whatnot, and which was a phenomenal response. I never expected that.
I think that when I saw it, mate, I think the thing that stood out to me was just it was clearly like very authentic. There was there's no bullshit. It was clear and it was straight to the point. It wasn't like that's what I think really stood out to me. So
and that's I suppose me in some aspects. I'm definitely not perfect. I've got my faults, but I believe I'm a good person, and I suppose a lot of people when they go through a relationship breakup, they think sort of the world's over. They don't really know what to do, and all of us, I suppose, in some aspect, have been there and done that and felt that that sense of loneliness and whatnot. But there's always someone out there who will listen, or and just hang in there, and the right person will come around one day. Plenty more fish in the sea.
That's right, exactly.
So
I've done that before. I think I googled how many women are in the world, and I think it was 1.6 billion. So I think there's plenty more opportunities.
There's plenty more. That's it. So
No, that's right. That's good, man. That's really good. Now, mate, when you're feeling overwhelmed or down, aside from what you spoke about before, like speaking to others and such, what are some of the ways that you use to cope or
Well,
get yourself back on track?
I sort of, probably not the best way, but I sort of just work. I like to get in work and keep busy. I think sitting around and whatnot, you can sort of go insane. Well, I do anyway. You tend to dwell on it too much and think about it too much. So I sort of like to keep busy. If not, I like to get out on my bike. I've got a couple of dirt bikes. Get out on them and go for a bit of ride, clear the head. And it's just sort of a sense of freedom. On a bike, you're 100% in control. And so that's sort of that. I sort of took some time off over Christmas to sort of just hang out and relax. And I've got probably 3 days into it, sorry. And I was going mad. I couldn't, I was over sitting around doing nothing. So I sort of rang up a friend and we went and carted a bit of hay for the drought from sort of down near where we were, Horsham in Victoria, sort of up to Warren, or up near the New South Wales Queensland border. And that was brilliant. That was sort of helping out in some aspects, but it gave me something to do. I don't think I could sit in a truck full time in that, doing that. But it was great for the 3 weeks I did it, and I enjoyed it and sort of kept my mind at bay. And so it was sort of just something for me to do. And then once I finished that, I went back to my normal job. And just really keeping busy, I think, is the main thing, not just sitting around and focusing on too much. Because anyone in their right mind would sort of go insane.
Definitely, that's very true. I think, there's a lot to be said for when you're working. I mean, when you're in that state, obviously you sort of still need to be in a reasonable mind state. But
of course,
I think when you're working on the job, it is a form of mindfulness in itself, I suppose, because you're focused, you're being present. Like as long as you're thinking about the job,
I suppose if you can sort of, obviously there is that safety aspect, and if your mind's not 100% there, well, that plays its own part, and you really got to think whether you should be there or not. Where I tend to think that I can separate myself and focus on the work and what needs to be done. And obviously it's still there and it's still in the back of your mind, but you just got to realise that you've got work to do and a job to be done, and get in and get it sorted, pretty much.
Definitely. That's good, mate. Cheers for sharing that. Now, just a final question, Darcy. So, knowing what you know now about work, life, and business, what's one piece of advice you'd give to a younger Darcy or a high school student?
Find something and find a career that you're passionate about, that you enjoy doing. It's not just about the money. It's something that you wake up each morning, or find something that you want to wake up each morning and you'll be excited to go and do. Every job has their pros and their cons, whether you're a plumber, electrician, a builder, a hairdresser, or a digs mechanic. It's something that what I'm doing now, I genuinely love doing. People are like, don't you get sick of being dirty all the time or crawling around in the dirt all day, every day? And you do. But at the end of the day, I look back and I think, well, my life's pretty great. I've got a job that I love. I've got everything I need. But it's just about finding something that you enjoy doing. If you don't enjoy doing it, well, why do it? Life's pretty short, and you just live life to the fullest. Whether that's work, it's something you spend the majority of your time doing. So you may as well enjoy it while you do it. So that's whether that's in the mining lifestyle or an 8 to 5 job in the city or whatnot. The money isn't everything. It does help, but it doesn't necessarily make you more happy or whatnot. So mate, that's probably my biggest piece of advice. Just do something you love doing. Find something you love doing.
Awesome, man. Cheers for that. Mate, that's all the questions I've got. Is there anything that we didn't cover, or is there any things you'd like to share before we wind it up, mate?
Not a great deal. I think we've covered the majority of it. I think what you guys are doing is a terrific thing. Getting out and talking to people who's doing it firsthand, sharing their stories, because everyone's story is different. Everyone has a story. No one's perfect, and each and every one of us live a different life and in a different way. So I think what you guys are creating and building and is a terrific thing. So congratulations and well done.
Thanks, mate. I appreciate that. Cheers.
But I definitely look forward to seeing more posts in the future and whatnot. And if there's anything I can do to help out or promote or whatever, mate, I'll just sing out. And I had a young fella message me off actually from that post I did a few months ago. He said, I'm phenomenal. I really admire your story and whatnot, what you've shared. And he's a young fellow. I actually did another post on him a few weeks ago. He's a young fellow with a bit of an illness, he's a disease actually, and he's quite blind. And there's no sort of cure for it or whatnot, but he's gone out and created a brand in a very similar thing in regards to mental health and creating awareness and whatnot, and trying to change the stigma and the stereotype around mental health and illnesses and whatnot. And and he's sort of doing a terrific job also. And you got to take your hat off to those sorts of people.
Sure. What's his brand name, mate? Just
it's called the Shaka Project. That's sort of the brand he's created, or Matt DeGrucci's vision, MDV. And I've done a few posts and tagged him in a few of my bits and pieces on Instagram. But definitely, jump on, share it, like it, whatever. He's sort of partially of all his, obviously of his what he's selling. The income or whatever is going to charities and whatnot. So he's it's going to a good cause, and he's just trying to create something. But anyone out there having a go, it's I take my hat off to them. They're doing a great job, and social media is a great way to advertise. It's the way of the future, and everyone's doing it. So
definitely. No, it's definitely. I'm sure it's changing a lot of like stigma and stuff, like you say, and people are starting to speak out about things now, and it's giving people power, isn't it? A lot.
Yeah. Like there's no need to be ashamed.
Of course. Yep.
We've all got our faults. Just embrace them.
Exactly. So. All right, no worries, Darcy. Well, thanks again for that, mate. I really appreciate your time. It's been really good and very, very valuable. I'm sure a lot of people will get a lot out of that. So, thanks
anytime, mate. I appreciate it.
Sure. So. Mate, just before we go, so people will find you on Instagram, and it's was it DPS Diesel?
Diesel Powered Services. That's my business Instagram, or DWPagey. So DWPAGEY. That's my personal Instagram. I do love a good selfie, so don't mind them. But get on, like me, whatever.
Sure. And you're happy for people to reach out to you?
Man, definitely. Send me a message. I'll try to do my best to reply to everyone. Obviously, I'm quite busy with work and whatnot, but by all means, send me a message and go from there.
Cool. So. And cheers, mate. And for us, we're on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Give us a subscribe or a like if you see us, Spotify and iTunes now as well. So check us out. But thanks again, Darcy. I'll chat to you later, mate.
No worries. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Cheers, mate.